Good evening, everyone. This is Janaki broadcasting from the Netherlands with the Not So Sacred radio show. And tonight, my guest is Cameron Clark. Hi, Cameron.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. I was just thinking about the phenomenon of Facebook. I've made so many friendships with people that have become really, really, really dear friends
Yeah,
and that I've never seen before.
I'm right there with you.
Isn't that incredible? There was one lady that I met 5 years ago, no, 6 years ago now, and we are literally best friends now. We Skyped like 5 times a day for about 5 years, and then we finally met.
I know, it's funny how that works. I'm doing the same thing, probably, I'd say in the last year or two, made so many friends just on Facebook alone, and we've
Yeah,
never met, but we chat daily or, semi-daily, and
yeah,
it's just very interesting how it's changing the way we relate to people.
yeah, yeah. It has certainly changed our lives. That is for sure.
Good ways and bad ways, but
Good, yeah. It has enriched in many ways, and the bad way is I'm so addicted to my iPad. Oh my god,
there is that.
it's a big deal.
It could be an addiction for some, yes.
Sometimes it feels like it's glued to my body.
Yeah, like there's an umbilical cord, it's attached.
Yes, yeah, like these people that walk around with their laptops.
I know.
Really like an umbilical cord. You're right.
That and cell phones.
So Cameron,
Yes,
you and I have something in common, I think.
I would
It's
agree.
it's a big thing, yeah. It's like we both gave ourselves away for a while to a spiritual teacher.
Yes.
Yes. Actually, I did it several times. I started when I was 14. I only stopped a couple of years ago, but you were a lot shorter, right?
Well, I was thankful to get in and out when I did, but um,
Yes. Yeah.
it could have easily gone a different way. I was close to
Yeah.
falling into another trap very, very soon after I left the first one. So,
Yeah, isn't
yeah.
that interesting? Okay, but we're gonna get to that. We're not gonna jump ahead. But I always say about myself, some people have to learn the hard way.
Yep. I'm one of those people.
No, I am one of those people.
Oh, well, there's more of us then.
With the last one, I hung in there for 12 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's very long. That's very long. But anyway, so basically, I asked you to come and tell the story of your experience with a woman called Teal Swan.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start out just a little bit of an introduction. Who is Teal Swan?
Teal Swan, she is a self-proclaimed spiritual leader of the New Age right now. She has positioned herself as a spiritual authority,
Mm-hmm.
and she's a YouTube video channel sensation, if you want to say so. She's sort of an author and a speaker that does workshops around the country, and I would say she is arguably well, I don't even know if it's arguable at this point. She is pretty much a charismatic type.
Personality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So would you say she's in the same league as, let's say, Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie?
As far as
Or maybe
uh,
as far as how well she's known, like what do you call popularity?
I don't think she's Oprah quality, but I do think that it could go there. Yes, I think she'd like to be. It's very close to that precipice, I would say. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's only kind of snowballing at this point, from what I can see. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that that's the goal for her.
Yeah. And she is probably surrounded by a very smoothly working marketing machine.
At this point, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it that this is a very calculated marketing engine that is behind her.
And how long would you say has it been since she became sort of well known? I mean, how many years has this been going on?
Not very long. She started off at the end of 2011, I believe, really going public when her first book was released, and
Oh, so
then
that's only like three
two,
three years.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
she just started
So
really
she
taking
got
off.
big really fast then.
Absolutely, yeah. The jump off point was 2012 when she really started doing workshops and hitting it hard, basically, with
Uh-huh.
the promotions and interviews and workshops.
So let's start at the beginning. How did you ever hear about her, and why were you so interested?
The very beginning, I would have to say that it started when I was at a very low point in my life. I was basically searching for some sort of answer to why I had felt sort of disconnected and numb. My entire life, I had done what I'd always thought I was supposed to do. I did well in school, got a good corporate job with benefits, but I was, at the end of the day, I was fairly numb and miserable.
Yeah.
And eventually I lost my job of 5 years when I was working as a corporate manager. And from there, when I lost my job, I kind of felt like I lost my identity. I had been working 50 to 60 hours a week. I had
Wow.
lost touch with all my friends and basically I was just kind of searching for my next step, wondering what's the purpose? Why are we here? I started having these questions that I never really stopped and taken the time to ask before. So I was very new to spirituality, very new to any kind of questioning. I had actually never been in any sort of religion growing up.
Uh-huh.
And I stumbled onto some of her videos on self-worth and deserving online. And just from there, this law of attraction thing sort of came into my reality after I was introduced at 12 with The Secret. And then it
At
popped up again.
12.
Yes, I had seen.
How old are you now, if I may ask?
How what?
How old are you now, if I may ask?
Oh, yes, you may. I'm 30 now.
Okay. So that's wow. You were very young to get in touch with that kind of stuff. How come you got in touch with The Secret when you were 12?
It was just something my mom brought home one day.
Ah.
It was a book that she brought home into the house, and I saw the video and a book on it, and it really didn't do much for me at that point. I was 12, and I just kind of put it to the wayside until later when I really started taking the time to question life and wonder what I was doing and my purpose and my next step. And I was just sort of in a place of transition when I stumbled onto her videos.
Mhm.
And so there was this person who's kind of reaching out to people in a vulnerable state.
Yeah.
That's typically what happens when you fall into these sort of things. You're looking for answers, and that's who I found.
So 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 what did those first videos do with? I mean, no. Let me ask first. Does she propagate stuff like the law of attraction and the secret, or?
Basically, hers is thoughts create reality. She's been into that mindset. It's mostly Abraham Hicks more than The Secret, but Abraham Hicks obviously and The Secret
That they
have a
are.
lot in common.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So okay. So then you saw her YouTube clips, and then what happened to you?
Well, from there, I started studying everything that she had put out at that point. I basically read her book, watched her videos, listened to her interviews, and workshops. She had online workshops that were available. And I had studied her material for about 6 months. And at that point, I really started to feel better because in the course of 10 years, I'd been struggling with a lot privately as far as eating disorder and some, just kind of low grade depression, just from just always being sort of numbing myself and trying to escape the questioning. So from that, I actually started to kind of improve on, going from this powerlessness to this law of attraction where you have control over the harsh realities of life. It's up to you. If you can just, concentrate on how you're feeling and what you're thinking about, then all of a sudden you have some sort of control. So that was appealing at first. And I heard a workshop of hers asking for volunteers at some point to help her build her business. And she was talking about this intentional community she wanted to start and having people help volunteer with her to start sort of a positive world change movement. And so
Wow.
I ended up contacting Blake online which is her right-hand man, marketing person. And through emails and Skype exchanges, basically, from there, I was a volunteer helping with her workshops, helping plan
Did you physically live close to her, or
yeah,
how did that? Okay.
eventually, when I finally met them in person at a workshop down in Santa Barbara, from there, it kind of, the discussion had already come up about moving to live with her. And I mentioned when I first met her in person at the workshop, I asked, is it really in my highest, greatest potential to move down there and work with you guys? And her response was, yes, absolutely.
So, but wait a minute. So when you pose a question like that, it almost sounds like you're asking it to someone who is a psychic and who knows the future.
That's exactly what she was posing as, and that's exactly what I saw it as. And she capitalized on that very well. So, for instance, she said something about soul family, that we were a soul family. She nudged me and said, "It's about time, welcome home." She told me that Blake and I had so many past lives together that it was a bit boring to the rest of them, and that she had weaved this other story with him, that our most recent past life, Blake and I's, was that we were in Nazi Germany, married, some concentration camp, and we were separated when they took our children, and that's how it ended in our most recent past lifetime in Nazi Germany, 1945. So
you know what?
kinda,
When someone tells a story like that to someone else, I bet that most people could find that in themselves. Most people would say, "Oh, that makes sense," because of some mysterious hurt or sadness, which actually most people feel. Don't you think?
exactly.
It's because let's not move too fast, because maybe also for the listeners, because there could be also a whole audience who've never heard about her. So let's do a little bit more background information. What are these claims that she? I mean, how can she say with so much authority that she knows your past life and that she knows this kind of stuff? Where does that come from?
Her ideas about herself, she claims she's an extrasensory luminary who has psychic abilities.
Wait a minute, an extrasensory luminary.
Her words.
Yeah, no, I get that. I was just wondering what that means, an extrasensory luminary.
You and I both. She has psychic abilities above and beyond what most have. She can see life paths, she could see auras, she could see energies. She's basically could see the future and the past. She can draw and pull information from the ethers. She's just, superwoman, basically. She's also a Eucharist who is sent on a mission to raise human awareness. And she's an alien from Arcturus. Her higher self is an alien from Arcturus. These are her claims, mind you.
Okay. So why do you think people believe that?
Well,
because this is not so. I mean, anyone can say this about themselves. I mean, how do they prove it? Because, like I said, if I will tell a perfect, anyone, if I tell them, well, in your last life, you died a horrible death, and because of that, you have some unresolved issues in this life, and it could be related to being afraid of the dark, or not being able to wear something around your neck because of the noose that they hung. I mean, if you tell people stuff like that, they can almost always find it.
Well, in my case, what I can tell you, I can't speak for everybody, but for me personally, it was about suspending disbelief. Okay, so for my purposes,
it was about suspending disbelief. What do you mean by that?
For my purposes, what she had done is basically made me feel better. So with her belief system and her information in the first place, she had improved my situation to that point. Yeah. Granted, this improvement only goes so far, but in that time span, the improvement itself was enough for me to suspend disbelief and think she must be telling the truth about other things. Since her information is working, then my mind logically drew the conclusion that perhaps she is telling the truth. But it wasn't a matter of me buying it hook, line, and sinker per se. It was more of a matter of me suspending the disbelief that I had. Because
you had that.
because I did have that. My first reaction was, oh boy, an extraterrestrial. What am I dealing with? Okay, but she made me feel better. So therefore, it was like a drug in a way. It overrides sort of logical thinking when you're in a space of feeling better all the time.
Yeah.
So that's just my personal take on why somebody would kind of fall into that. Well, I can't prove that it's not true per se. I don't know that what she's saying isn't true because I obviously don't have any way to verify. So I'm going to have to suspend my disbelief because everything else she's told me to this point has worked.
So this is probably true as well.
Right.
Because were there
There's an
ever
if then
instances
sort of.
where she would say stuff about someone where you could say, oh, she could only have known this if she was a true psychic?
I don't believe that I can point any time where that happened. I tried to rack my brain on that, and every single time she's made some sort of an observation, it was likely something that she picked up on in an earlier conversation or through information from somebody else. So no, I can't say that there was ever a time when she said something verifiably, excuse me, true that nobody else could know unless they were psychic. No, I cannot say that.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It was very.
Yeah. So
she's very adept at playing off of people's outwardly apparent deficiencies, reading body language and whatnot, and making them feel like she knows things. But realistically, she's just observant.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why people believe this is because they so desperately want to believe this. I mean, how cool is it if you found someone who has like a direct connection to God and tell you, solve all your problems and give you all the answers you seek.
Absolutely. It appeals to our need for certainty. It appeals to our need for specialness. It appeals for so many things, and it's things that people are looking to outside of themselves to fix. So yeah, it's definitely a classic.
Yeah. Was that in your case also true that you really wanted it to be all true?
In a sense, yes. There was some sort of piece of this extraterrestrial puzzle missing, because I'd actually fallen into the David Icke, Alex Jones conspiracy before finding Teal 2, Illuminati and whatnot. And
so you had been hearing some alien stuff, some alien shit, yeah.
So when she came along, it was just more confirmation along the same lines of what I had run into.
So it has to be true.
Right.
Okay, so let's go back to that workshop. So you went to meet them. It was like Santa Barbara, did you say?
It was. No, yes, it was actually. Sorry.
Okay, and then you decided to move there.
To Utah, yes.
Yeah. So basically, you quit your job. Oh no, you'd already lost your job, right?
Right.
So basically, you packed your stuff and you moved there into their house.
No, I had an apartment first.
That you rented.
That was literally 5 minutes from them, and it was an accident. But it was like less than 5 minutes driving, and it seemed like it was all meant to be synchronistically working out at that time, because I was very much in the law of attractions mentality. So I found this apartment really close by.
Yeah. You were in the flow.
It was. Yes.
So just sort of walk me through how that, what that was like. Like, did you go there every day? Did you wash your clothes? I mean, what did you go do?
The very first day I was in Utah, I came what's called over to their house to get diapers, for instance, and then they wanted me to go grocery shopping because their cars weren't working at that time, and so I had to take them to the grocery store. And then from there were two other girls that had decided to move down at the same time that showed up, and so we were all kind of indoctrinated together and recognized that Teal wasn't in a very stable place. She was going through a divorce. She had just started dating this other fellow named Fallon. Her life was kind of in upheaval. She needed help with her house, her cleaning, her child care, her everything. Basically, her life needed help with so that she could build her career and her mission is what she told us. There was this sort of mission that she needed to fulfill, and we were all there as we were called to her to help her with this mission.
So basically, she got everyone to do her daily chores for her so she could focus on what was more important.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting way of life.
Right?
Isn't it?
Power of
no
the
cleaning, no cooking, no laundry.
Oh, yes. And she claims it all very conveniently is because she's programmed against self-care.
Wait a minute. No, wait. She, what? Say it again.
Well, a big part of her story is that she has been she has endured satanic ritual abuse.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you to shed a little light on that. She has, because I did actually read this on her web, wherever on the internet. She has a whole background of being
ritually tortured for 13 years, she claims.
Abused,
Yeah. By a satanic Mormon psychopath.
Yeah, under the noses of her parents.
Right, with Nazi-style mind control programming.
That is what she said.
Correct. And in that, over the course of that programming, she apparently was programmed.
How would she know at that age what Nazi-style mind control is?
Well, obviously she connected the dots later, but I mean, at the time, I'm sure that man was very into Hitler because she has made references to that effect. So, yeah, I was just noticing that the big convenient excuse for her not being able to do all these things was the mind control part of it, her being so abused and tortured. So that helped pull on the heartstrings to get everybody else to help.
Yeah, so she was
manipulating,
playing the guilt card.
Yes, manipulating.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a really, if you have a good sob story, then people will take pity on you and they'll do anything to help you.
Yes, especially when she's claiming to, have suffered as a martyr in order to help raise awareness. And
that is what she claims.
Yes, and to catalyze positive world change, and then you're part of this movement, this social movement to help raise awareness and change the world. Basically, it's all very, very classic.
Those are very, very interesting sales pitches.
Mm-hmm.
I am here to raise awareness, so you need to wash my clothes. Yeah, yeah, it's a good deal.
Yes, we're all just kind of stepping stones for her mission. It's a very hierarchical structure, and it's very sort of, sacrificial sort of. You sacrifice yourselves for the greater good. It's all very classic themes.
Yeah, it's so the first word that pops into my mind is Jesus.
Yep, martyr, Christianity.
Yeah.
She calls herself a Eucharist. I mean, that should say it all.
I don't know what a Eucharist means because I didn't have a sort of very Christian upbringing.
Well, if anybody looks that up, it's sort of like a religious sacrament, it's a term, sort of like like you said, Jesus, Savior complex thing.
Yeah. So you were in their house, and then what happened? You were called the first day, and you had to drive them around and do chores with them. Yeah.
I mean, in the course, sorry, it just kind of rehashing some of this stuff. I did an interview once before, but basically, it took about a couple months of going over there every day, volunteering, helping them with their chores, getting into the swing of things, and then eventually we were asked to move in to her house when the tenants that were in her house before moved out of her basement, and her boyfriend at the time arranged for us to move into the basement. And so I had actually had a roommate in my apartment when I moved down there initially who ended up, meeting a nice man and just getting married and basically moving in with him. And so the lease agreement that I had was up anyways. So it was kind of once again, synchronistic movement to a natural progression, it seemed, to move into that basement.
They would have called it perfect timing.
Right. Yeah. So that's what happened. And I was there for a month in the house total, and another 2 weeks traveling with them, 2 or 3 weeks traveling with them at workshops, living out of hotels with them daily. And then after that, I spent a total of 6 months in that community. But after that, we had an episode called Shadow House. We all moved out into my apartment together, out of Teal's house into my apartment, and I stayed there for the remainder of that 6 months before I left and came to Washington. So that's the timeline.
Okay, so did they pay your expenses, or
No, not at all.
like when you moved into their house, who was paying for food? Or did you all have to share, or did you have to
We were
share the
all
rent?
sharing. We all paid rent, and the food situation was it was tried to be worked out at the beginning that we would all share for food, and then I ended up just buying my own food. I rarely ate with them, and then I would also buy food for them. It was kind of a weird deal, but
Yeah,
there was in an intentional community, there was an attempt to work out budget situation, but yeah.
it
No, they
never
did not.
really worked.
No, and they did not pay for anything. No work, not the volunteering, none of it. So,
And would she give gifts to people as a thank you token or appreciation or stuff
not
like
to
that?
me.
Okay.
No, not to me. She wanted gifts. We gave her gifts, and like on her birthday, she was showered with gifts, and
Oh,
she's a very
okay.
gift oriented person. I don't know if you even look at her website, she'll tell you her love language, whatever that means, is
Uh-huh.
gifts.
Okay. Okay. And did she also give you a gift when it was your birthday?
No, and I wasn't there on my birthday. I didn't stay that long.
You didn't say that. So tell me what it was like. What kind of, what was it like living with her? Tell me some of the stuff that you went through there.
Well, um, it was a very harrowing experience, to be quite honest with you.
Hmm.
It was an eye-opening experience. I'm not going to say that. I'll just be frank. It was one of the worst experiences in my life.
Yeah.
But uh, if if I have to describe what it's like, it's basically a roller coaster. It was being on a constant trauma cycle with somebody who's constantly trying to knock you off balance and keep you in this fight or flight response to where your logical centers are not working
What's an
properly.
example of that? How would she do that?
Well, first of all, we're being indoctrinated. She's talking about her powers on a daily basis and how, she's got all these abilities, and she can see our energy patterns, she can see our thoughts, she can read our minds, she knows exactly what we're thinking
So
and how we're
basically, she
feeling.
knows you better than you know you.
Yes, and she's trying to tell you how to think, how to feel, what to just constantly moving you around like like chess pieces basically, and playing you against each other and using the group to triangulate and manipulate people. It's just a typical cult type setting is what I had an up close and personal view of. Basically, a nascent cult, a fledgling cult. And in that time frame, there was just a lot of emotional, physical, verbal, or not physical, but physical threat of.
Like, what was the threat?
For instance, her boyfriend at the time was at one point had chased me around the house because he was so upset, and out the front door, and
You
it
mean
was very.
chased you like he was going to hit you, or
Yeah, that
why?
kind of a threat. Just because she had him worked up. She had him all worked up over something that she didn't like, and it was her way of pitting people against each other. It's just that type of an atmosphere. It was very toxic. And I allowed myself to be in that situation. So it was just one of those things that helped me realize why people allow themselves to be in these situations. And I really started to question, really started to see things in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, it was also, I experienced her trying to convince me to commit suicide at one point.
She tried to convince you to commit suicide?
Correct. When she
Okay,
became
let's
upset.
have that story. How did that happen? I mean,
Well,
that's major.
yeah, she's
If
very.
a human being with that do that to another human being.
I agree.
So why did that happen? Why did she do that? What was going on?
I can't speak to her motivations because if I do, I'd be basically saying that she's a psychopath. But if I had to
No, we're not saying
explain
she's a psychopath.
if I had to explain the situation of what happened, it was an instance where she had been explaining that. Well, I'll start from the beginning. There was a book called The Woman Code that she asked us to read, and
What was the name of the book?
The Woman Code,
The Woman Code. And what was this book about?
basically about women's bodies and
Okay.
the hormones and blood types and
Okay.
the things that we go through.
Periods.
Yeah, stuff like that. So I read the book, sort of interested in it, and then I go over to her house, and she tells me one day that my blood sugar's off, and that her cat Cosmos is a holographic soul projection from the planet Sirius, and he is
Really?
telepathically sending me images to tell me that my blood sugar is off and that there's a problem with my pancreas. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I just read about blood sugar and its effect on the body in that book you recommended me read, The Woman Code. And I said it very nonchalantly, offhand manner, and she instantly bristled and took offense to it. She was completely just on defense mode and claimed that I was questioning her integrity and that I didn't trust her. And she basically got all of the people in the room to sit around and watch her break me down. And in the process of doing this, she tried to tell me that I was passively suicidal. She instantly jumped to saying that I'm passively suicidal. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been suicidal in my life.
You had never had thoughts about suicide.
Right. And she said, what if I told you that you are passively suicidal instead? And I said, I don't know really what that means. And then she went into this whole spiel about how, she can see my thoughts and she can see my vibrations, and just trying to tell me that I'm just this very toxic person and that my energy is like needles. And she's saying that I'm going to die of breast cancer and that I have a bunch of ulcers. And this is all news to me because I've never had any symptoms like this. And in the end, she gets me to this point where she claims that I'm not committed to life and I should just get in my car right now and she's like, go ahead, get in your car, go drive. And you need to take a drive and decide whether or not you're committing to life. And she goes out the door and I'm just completely floored thinking, wow, this person is absolutely deranged. And
did you feel like the implication was, if you discover you're not committed to life, you might as well drive into a wall or something?
Exactly. Get in your car and go drive into a median is what I took away from that experience.
Because if you make these claims and if you then go ahead and tell people stuff about themselves as if it is the ultimate truth or the absolute truth because you can see it and they can't, that is pretty intense. Because
Correct.
basically she is immediately checkmating everybody.
Yeah.
Because she has the truth and she knows everything. And actually what I'm also getting from your story is that she's the only one who knows everyone, because I doubt she thinks anyone else knows what she knows.
Oh, she doesn't. Nobody else is like her according to her.
So and then what happened? Then she walked out of the house and what did you do?
Well, then I was almost in tears. I realized she was crazy, that only a crazy person would try to do that to somebody. Everybody else sat around kind of watching in the group. Nobody said anything, but one girl mentioned, oh, wow, she's really hard on you, after Teal leaves the room, of course. Yeah. So I'm just like going to go back to my apartment. I'm going to pack up my stuff. I'm going to move home. And that's when her boyfriend then at that time, Fallon, called me and texted me and was like, oh God, are you okay? I just want you to know when you left, Teal got all upset and she was concerned. But Teal never apologized. Teal never told me that. This was coming from Fallon. So there was, again, the group pressure to pull me back into the fold. So then I started feeling sorry for Teal, thinking, wow, I guess she really is disturbed. How could somebody get to that point where they would be so cruel to somebody? She must have gone through something horrible. And I really kind of justified that as something that I could take. I could shoulder that because, she's obviously gone through so much worse, right?
Yeah. It's almost like she basically tops everybody off in every area.
Yeah.
Like she's the most beautiful. I have read something where she explains why she is attractive to every human being. And she's psychic. She can see thoughts, she can see auras, she can see so much stuff. But then when it comes to the other side, to the negative side, and the suffering, there she also tops everybody off because she suffered more than anybody else.
Right. And she's the best energy healer, and nobody can do what she does. She's the best spiritual teacher. It goes on and on and on. And that's, again, almost a prerequisite for these people is a sort of narcissism.
Yeah, but this
And
this also this almost goes beyond narcissism. I'm
oh,
wondering
it
if
does.
there's another psychiatric term for this.
Oh, there is, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's several. I mean, there's no doubt she's got more than one, but it's just this sort of grandiosity that it's just very commonplace with a lot of spiritual leaders. And anytime somebody claims they have the answers, I say run, because
Yeah.
it's just not there.
Yeah. And especially if it's combined with asking money.
Oh yes, or selling something.
You're
Absolutely.
selling something, yeah. Does she charge high prices like Baron Katie does?
I like, as far as her workshops go,
Hmm.
I don't know what's high prices. I think for what she offers, it's high, but for what
Well,
I what
Baron
I
Katie
understand,
asks $5,000 for a 9-day course.
Teal doesn't offer 9-day courses, but for a workshop, a several-hour workshop, it's $200 per
Oh,
ticket, I guess.
that is steep.
And again, for the service that she's offering, no, I think it's very steep.
Yeah. So what does she do in those workshops with her?
From what I can tell, she essentially she claims all of these things, but if you actually look at the nuts and bolts of it, she brings people up on stage to perform some sort of mental chess game with them, and basically poke around at them and tell them what they need, or let them ask a question, and then and claim to be the answer or explanation or mirror to what they need.
Hmm. Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of Baron Katie's setting. Because I think Baron Katie plays a role in her life, doesn't she?
Absolutely. There was when I was there, during the indoctrination process, there was a lot of Byron Katie's work being used to sort of break us down, indoctrinate us, the judge your neighbor sheets, the work
So
itself.
how did she use that to break people down? I mean, I'm sure Katie wouldn't be pleased if she heard that that's how they used her work. But how do you think she used the work to break people down? What was that like?
Well, I think that work in general does that. I mean, I'm sorry, but Byron Katie's work to me is kind of a joke. I mean, it's just from what I experienced, it was horrible. It's very masochistic. You take everything and you turn it around on yourself, and it's just a matter of um, self-punishment in a way.
Hmm.
You take everything and you flip it back on yourself, and what? Then what? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what happens. And then not only that, but the judge your neighbor sheets. You take everything that everyone does in every situation, and it's flip it back on you. And you
Yeah.
do that for hours and hours on end in a group setting like that. She
Oh,
had
she
us
would have
down.
you do that in a group setting, hours and hours on end.
Yes, she had us. Everybody in the group had iPads or a laptop, especially Fallon and myself and Graciela and Teal. And there would be these, if you had an issue, or if you had something going on with you, or if somebody pointed something out about you, then you had to go and do the work on this. And
Okay.
Fallon, her boyfriend, nearly, I mean, he seemed like he was going crazy by the end of it. He would literally sit and just kind of rock back and forth for hours, just typing on this iPad, doing these sheets for Byron Katie's The Work. And I have
Wow.
emails upon emails of him doing this. And I really think he started to go crazy while I was there because
Yeah.
of it.
I'm not sure that Byron Katie herself intended her work to be used this way. I mean, it's not that I'm for Byron Katie at all, but you already know that. But
Hmm.
in her defense, I must say that this is not how she applies it, you know, what I'm hearing from you.
Hmm.
So because she would have people do it on their own.
Yeah, no, there was always somebody there to help with the turnarounds.
Okay. But was that someone who knew what he was doing, or
I don't think so.
no?
Not unless Teal knows what she's doing, and none of us certainly did.
And would she also do that? Would she sit with people to interfere or to help to facilitate the work with them, or to help them, or guide them, or?
Very rarely, no. I mean, she would do it herself and have people working with her on her stuff, but no, she very rarely would do it for anybody else. She would
Interesting.
let them. She would let them do it amongst themselves, and then she would also lead some sort of shadow house group where she would use Byron Katie's examples and be kind of like the leader and set everybody else against each other.
Okay. Well, you were saying Shadow House group? What is Shadow House?
Shadow House was an online webcast reality type series that she had started to basically promote her processes.
Like a reality show?
Basically,
And so what would she do there? What would happen in a Shadow House
we would sit
reality
around
show?
a table, being filmed while we're doing processes of Teal's or Byron Katie's, and yeah, it was all filmed. And then she would do other things, like if somebody had an issue or other topics, she would kind of discuss those things in a roundtable type setting. But it was supposed to be just a reality type deal where it's unscripted and kind of live.
So day in day out, this is what you guys were doing there,
Yeah, over the course of the 6 weeks that I spent actually under her roof, yes.
amongst doing all the chores.
Yes. And when we weren't doing chores or volunteering or coming over for occasional dinners where she would just kind of, because again, it wasn't all trauma, then there would be sort of like something fun or an activity, group activity where we'd go on a hike or we would have a dinner. But it was at the core, it was sort of like a trauma bonding type of situation with everyone.
uh, Trauma bonding.
Hmm.
It's an interesting term. So the people that are attracted to her or that go to her, the big numbers, also, from her Facebook. I mean, all of her Facebook groups are closed off, so if you're not allowed in, you can't really follow them fully. What what kind of people are they? Would you say they're what kind of people are they? Like, is it a
Personally,
specific age group, or is it people that it's like what I noticed with Byron Katie's school, especially in the latter years. A lot of people with psychotic problems would show up there. A
hmm
lot.
hmm
It's almost like they become a magnet for people who have all sorts of drama going on in their life and who are so desperate that they will pay all
yes.
this money to be healed.
And that's exactly what her demographic is, in my opinion. I don't know that there's a certain age demographic because I've seen all ages, all
Hmm.
different backgrounds, all different spiritual influences coming to her. But at the bottom, yes, there's a vulnerable, desperate, lost feeling to these people, and most of them have come to her because the Western medical field isn't helping with their depression,
Hmm.
anxiety,
That's
trauma,
true. Yeah.
post-traumatic stress disorders. I mean, because look at how she's marketing herself as this abuse
Yeah.
and trauma survivor. So of course
Yes.
she's like she's like a flame to all these moths
Yes.
just coming to her.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say that that's her market. She's marketing and leveraging the vulnerabilities of very weak people.
Well, basically, I think that is Byron Katie's angle too, because they always begin with her story, how she was so depressed and how she was so, she had so many phobias, and, not leaving the house and being tremendously overweight and only being in pain and, all kinds of disturbances. And then from one day to the next, it was all over and it was all healed. And sort of the subliminal message would be, if I can do it, you can too. I mean, that's how they sell themselves, I was down and out and I was depressed and I was this and that, and now all of a sudden I'm fine. So follow me and the same will happen to you. Isn't that it?
That's exactly it. Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us, just let's have some more details about stuff that was going on in that house. I'm curious.
Well, I mean, I'm hesitant because I've, if you have something specific you want to know about, great. I just, at this point, I'm not trying to claim a victim role in this. So if
No,
there's
I'm not.
something,
I'm not. You don't sound like a
okay,
victim. You sound like you really got over it. But I think it is very good if people share this kind of stuff because there are so many people out there that are definitely victims.
right. And so, I mean, my goal in doing this is to actually just for people to make an informed decision when it comes to following anybody, and it's not just Teal. But if I had to go into details, I mean, there was just a lot there that I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know where to begin. It was just a constant roller coaster. There was, you have something specific you wanted me to go into that you've heard?
Well, maybe
Great.
you can talk a bit more about the person Teal convinced to kill herself because there were others, right? It was not just you.
Right. There was a woman, that was a former client of Teal's named Leslie that actually Teal compared me to while I was there.
Hmm.
And this woman, Teal has publicly admitted to, basically, this woman didn't follow Teal's processes to the letter. She
Hmm.
was a frustration to Teal because Teal couldn't get her to respond to the manipulations in the way she had hoped. And
She didn't show signs of progress.
right,
There
and
were no success stories.
didn't make Teal feel good about Teal. So basically, Teal was convinced that there's nobody that could help this woman. Since Teal couldn't do it, nobody could.
Yeah.
And she might as well just kill herself. So they had a sit down talk, and she told this woman how she felt about her, and the woman's like, "You're right. I'm done. I'm just done." And she was already clinically depressed and had other issues, and she ended up very soon after taking her own life. And this
Oh,
is the kind of
that's serious.
yes. This is the kind of thing where you just have to stop and pause when somebody is such a God complex that they're going to tell a woman that there's no healer that can do anything for her vibration. And she just really needs to decide whether or not she's committed to life or not when
No,
somebody is
that's
clinically depressed.
yeah. That's like giving a death sentence to someone.
It's like giving a loaded gun to somebody
Yeah.
that's ready to off themselves. And to me, it's very irresponsible for anybody to do, let alone somebody positioning themselves as a healer and therapist and whatever else. It was just sickening that that woman actually went through with it. And there was no thought, no guilt, no remorse. It's, oh well, from source perspective, suicide doesn't matter. It's a
Really?
totally
Is that
valid
what she
option.
said?
Yes, that's her explanation. From source
Wow.
perspective, suicide's just a reset button, which is also Abraham Hicks. Very Abraham Hicks.
Oh. These
And
people, they claim to know something, but
she
I
claims that
think
death
I
is
think
the
they have no
ultimate.
clue.
She has no clue. Death is the ultimate reset. She's been known to say things like, "That's why it feels so good to die," as though she knows.
Yeah.
So when she's marketing herself like this and people are in this vulnerable place and somebody is telling them that there is an out, there is an escape, and it'll all be better, I just think it's completely dangerous and irresponsible. But
Yeah. Yeah. And no one ever connected the dots, none of this woman's family or
she had a husband who was very taken with Teal and continued to go to Teal for sessions after that.
after his wife died?
After his wife killed herself, yes.
Yeah.
After seeing Teal for treatment, he decided he was mad for a couple of days, and then he decided that he's going to
That Teal
continue.
was right. It was from a
Yeah.
source perspective, it was okay. And did no one ever suggest that it had anything to do with Teal telling her that she was basically no one could rescue her or heal her?
Well, I don't believe that this woman had much family. She didn't have any children. She
Okay.
had just her husband, basically. So who's going to press the issue, really? Who's close enough to her to know enough to press the issue is my question.
that is heavy stuff, Cameron.
Of
So
course
but
it is.
you were saying something about I don't see myself as a victim. So when did the feeling of victimhood stop? Because at some point you did feel like a victim, I assume.
Um, the I think that the personal responsibility part of it started very early on. I feel like I always chose to be there. I was always responsible for my choices to put myself in this situation. And for me personally, what I feel is more of an appreciation for the experience because it caused me to question things that I wouldn't have questioned before, and it allowed me to see my vulnerabilities in a way that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. I had to understand what it was about me that made me vulnerable to somebody like this, and I wouldn't have done it if I didn't go through the experience. So for me personally, it's been more about recognizing that the issue isn't necessarily that there's this crazy person named Teal Swan. The issue is more about why people are following her and the followers
Or anyone
mentality.
for that matter.
Yes, because if it's not her, there's going to be somebody else to take her place, and there
Yeah.
always has been.
Yeah.
And that's really where it comes down to: why do we give our minds, our time, and our energy over to these types of people, whether they're Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, David Wilcox? Why do we do it?
Hmm.
And that for me was huge. And so I guess what I wanted to get away from is that bashing Teal or rehashing the details. But if there's something specific that you wanted me to speak about, I'm more than happy to.
Yeah, well, I'm actually interested because when you were talking about in the beginning, you mentioned something you had to suspend your disbelief, but your first reaction was actually no, right?
Right.
Right. See, I had the same thing with when I first met Baron Katie. It wasn't the first. No, let me see. No, it wasn't the first. And in that first meeting was for me was awesome. It was I was so totally hooked. There was no way I could get out of there on my own. But then when she came around the second time and she'd already asked if I would help organize and she would take me on tour and all that stuff, and so she came to my house. And then as I was sitting next to her, and this was the first time that happened, there was this incredible, uncomfortable, physical, uncomfortable feeling. It's like my entire body was screaming, no. I was sitting next to her,
Yes.
and then I filed it away as fear because I was so in awe of her, and I completely equalized her to God, because for me she was like Teal was to you. She knew everything, she could see through anything, she was fully enlightened, she knew the future, blah blah blah. And so I reasoned with myself and I said, but you're so in awe, so naturally you're afraid. So that's where this no feeling is coming from. For me, it could not have anything to do with Byron Katie. But now looking back, it was simply my body telling me no, like it did with you, right?
Absolutely. I had the same experience when I first met her in person. There was just um, some this huge resistance that came over me when I was in the hotel after I dropped them off. Actually I had the urge to go for the door. And again, I
Yeah.
rationalized it as, oh, you're just being judgmental or
Yeah.
you're just in fear. And in
Yeah.
reality, yeah, these types of situations and being taught to kind of ignore our internal compass to
Yeah.
avoid being judgmental
Yes,
is a really
exactly.
big problem.
Yeah.
Because I do think your body was just saying no, and I know my body was just saying no, and it's
Because your
something.
body is so intelligent.
It really is.
It's so intelligent. It just knows.
Hmm.
And because I remember that feeling of no only grew. That never diminished over my entire 12 years. It only grew. And so then for me, I always figured, well, it's because I need to do the work. It's because I am believing a thought, and and I need to do the work because it's not true. So that kept me in that loop of doing the work all the time, like you're talking about, what you did in those days in Teal's house.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was experiencing as well. You go into this process of, well, if something is going on, it's your problem. You need to fix this. You need to resolve this. It's all you. It's not anybody else. It's all you.
Yeah.
So you take it on as any, and this is a great tool for emotional abusers to use, because, and especially in the spiritual community, because the law of attraction really primes you to focus only on the positive about people, and you kind of
Okay.
avoid and sweep the negative under the rug. And then
Yeah.
if there is an issue with, like, if you had an issue with Katie, or if I had an issue with Teal, then it's always flipped back on you, because they, of course, have done nothing and can't do anything. They can't be challenged. It's all you.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the work, you don't sweep it under the rug. It's basically the idea is that you bring it out because, the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, you have to write it down. But then when you start to do the process, then of course it turns out that it's all you. That is true. That is true.
Yeah, and I didn't mean sweeping under the rug as far as what you're doing. Of course, your stuff doesn't get swept under the rug, but as far as anything negative that the
Oh, you mean
leader,
about them?
yes, anything
Yeah.
negative about them is
Yeah.
getting swept or minimized or diminished. So they will
Yeah.
have an outburst, or they will have, a temper tantrum, or they will attack you and basically convince you to commit suicide. And then that gets minimized because that's not being positive. You're focusing on the negative. You have to focus on the positive. She's helping you. She's contributing to your expansion. She's contributing to your growth. How can you focus on the negative?
Yeah.
That's the justification that happens with these spiritual
Yeah.
law of attraction
Yeah.
followers.
So that paying attention to that very first physical feeling is actually a very good pointer for a lot of people, because I'm sure a lot of people have had similar stuff, but they can only see it in hindsight. And then of course when you really yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a friend that told me about the Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker, and apparently that is one of the main things he points out is your physical reaction to people, and to pay attention to that.
Yeah, don't
Because
ignore
it is
it.
important.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's a good point.
Yeah, however, what the trap is, if you want it so bad, you're going to sweep that negative feeling under the rug.
Of course,
Right?
they're leveraging.
That's what happens.
Leveraging your aspirations is key. That's why anybody who falls into cults, they're leveraging your aspirations, and then they're exploiting your talents and your energies, basically.
Yeah. Yes, we have seen it so many times. It's happened so many times. It's still happening. It probably will happen a lot of times again. It's amazing. So, okay. So, I'm just gonna ask you a question, but it's not like a judgment. I'm just curious to your opinion, your personal opinion. All those stories that Teal tells about her past, because she is, I think in some of her blogs, she really describes into great detail, in some of her interviews too, what that guy did to her, with the satanic guy. Do you believe those stories?
I personally do not. And I think that's the perfect ace card that she used to manipulate myself. And I know it's others as well. I believe that she endured some sort of sexual abuse.
Something happened, that's for sure.
Yes, some sort of, most likely sexual in nature. But as far as the satanic ritual abuse story, I believe, very strongly believe that this was adopted after she began seeing a therapist by the name of Barbara Snow in Utah, who specialized in satanic ritual abuse. And I believe very strongly, after hearing Teal's account of this woman, that Barbara Snow was critical in Teal explaining her conditions, her mental conditions that she was already experiencing, using the satanic ritual abuse story to justify the behavior. Because I have Googled her, and her information is all out there. Barbara Snow has been censored for basically implanting false memories in clients, and she had a agenda to basically prove that satanic ritual abuse existed in Utah.
Oh,
So Teal explained that she had seen this woman for 5 years after she had left this abuser of hers, she claimed. And she was with Blake at the time, cutting
yeah.
herself. I heard she was addicted to ketamine. She had been cutting herself. She'd been
She was
having
addicted to what?
ketamine,
What is that?
some sort of a drug, a veterinarian drug, but it causes hallucinations in people and all sorts of experiences, mental
Oh,
experience.
really? Is it also like a painkiller, or is it like Coke, or what?
In animals, I believe it's some sort of a painkiller. In people, I think it's more like a some sort of a brain.
Hallucinatory drug or something.
I think so.
Wow.
Not a drug expert, but that's what I gathered. And it produces these sort of out of body euphoric experiences in people, and they enter something called a K-hole. And I believe that that's possible where she got some of these outlandish ideas, but I'm not going to say for sure that she didn't already have a pre-existing mental condition that allowed that.
Mm-hmm.
But she basically, I think, was having a lot of emotional problems as a child. Her parents didn't really know what to do with her, and a lot of that stuff you're just born with. But in her case, she didn't really have an explanation for it until she went to see Barbara Snow. And then after the first meeting, according to Teal, Barbara knew exactly what she was dealing with. And over the course of 5 years, she was treated by this woman. And I personally think that this story developed over time. I think Teal learned about satanic abuse through her, learned about all of the situations, and adopted these stories in group therapy, and basically built her own narrative to why
Persona,
she
yeah.
to build her own narrative is to explain why she was having
Okay. So
these
basically
experiences.
that story started to form itself after she started seeing Barbara Snow.
Yeah, and then
Oh,
her
that
and
is interesting. So
she's
that would make Teal into a victim, actually.
essentially, I think Barbara Snow might be a menace, and that's something to be looked into at some point, as far as why she would push her own agenda at the expense of somebody else like that. So yeah, I guess if you want to put her into that category of being a victim, I would say Teal probably started off as a very sick girl and came out of therapy worse off than when she went in.
So, but do you think that Teal believes her own story?
I think she's that delusional to where she may have convinced herself that this is true, and that could be some of the psychosomatic seizures that she undergoes, because there is a psychosomatic element to the seizures that she does actually experience. So I think that it might have less to do with the actual trauma and more to do with the trauma that she was implanted with from this therapist.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very good possibility that she does at some level believe this, because of who knows what kind of damage that somebody like Barbara Snow could do to an already vulnerable individual. So do I think it actually happened? It's strange credulity. And some of the things don't line up. The timelines just don't line up. And the abuser, I mean, I don't think her parents gave enough access to the abuser to actually program her to the extent that you would need to program somebody. Like the time spent one weekend a month or one day a month, or even saying that she was programmed to wake up in the middle of the night and run off to find him. I mean, that to me, going all night without sleeping, I mean, that doesn't add
And
up.
without your parents noticing?
Right. It's just
It's difficult to believe, yeah.
strains credulity. It really does, and I do think she's a very damaged person personally, but she's also very dangerous. And do I want to see her stopped? Yes. Do I want to?
Well, if she, my thought was, if she, it's interesting. I mean, if she knows that all the stories are concocted and are not true, then she's just flat out deceiving everybody. But if she believes they were true, then I find it even all the more dangerous, because someone who is so delusional has no business being a spiritual guide to anyone, I would say.
I mean, I say so too. It really doesn't matter. The intentions don't matter. The actions matter. And from what I've seen, it's dangerous in any case. I don't really. To me, it doesn't matter whether she leaves it or not. The outcome is the same. She's causing a lot of confusion and basically leading others into more confusion.
Yeah.
I mean, and it. I really do agree, though, that it would be unfortunate if she didn't know that these stories weren't true. But I think there's an element of both within her. I think that's possible. I think
So some part of her may know what is exaggerated and what is imagined and what possibly happened.
right. Some part of her
Yeah.
probably does. But
Yeah.
I think that there are some other pre-existing mental conditions going on that may make it difficult for her to suss things out. I mean, she may need certain medications to get leveled out to the point where she is
Well,
capable.
it would be interesting if someone would assess her, you know, in a
Certainly would. I just don't
psychiatric
buy the
way.
whole I don't buy the whole satanic ritual abuse thing as the reason why. And I don't believe that trauma is always the reason why somebody turns out this way, because there are a lot of genetic factors as well. And you could take, for instance, a Ted Bundy. I mean, or
Yeah.
you could take somebody else and somebody else can go through 10 times the amount of trauma that Ted Bundy went through and never become a serial
Who is
killer.
Ted Bundy? Because I mean, my audience isn't solely from the U.S.,
Oh,
so it's there could
Ted
be
Bundy
several
is
people who don't
a
know who
infamous
that is.
serial killer.
Huh?
Right.
Oh, he was a serial killer. Okay, probably
An
everybody
infamous
knows it, but
serial
me
killer.
then. Okay, so
No.
what is Teal's opinion about Ted Bundy? Was
That he was some sort of damaged child, and that's the reason why he does what he does. And anybody that's damaged would turn out the way that he did. But my point is that is completely ridiculous. And you can take somebody and put them through 10 times the trauma that a serial killer like Ted Bundy went through, and they will never turn out to be a serial killer. So how can you
no,
say that trauma and some damaged inner child is the reason why we have pedophiles and the reason why we have serial killers and the reason why we have the Hitlers of the world? Because realistically, trauma is not the reason why that happens, in my opinion. Not
and
an explanation. So for
so
her, it's not an excuse either, in my opinion, for her to be doing
okay.
what she's doing.
No, but I mean, if she says that people with a childhood like that, they naturally become serial killers, then she ought to be one too, right?
Precisely.
Yeah. But then
Yeah.
she's not, so she's showing the world how you can go through a terrible ordeal and then you can come out as radiant as she is now.
If you say so.
Yeah. No. I mean, I'm not saying how I see her. I'm saying how she would see her. You
Right.
understand?
No,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does she go into the whole alien stuff a lot? Does she spend a lot of time talking about
Of
that?
course. Oh, yes. This is fascinating stuff for her. She loves to weave these stories. And in fact, one of the things I could probably just go into this experience, she convinced us that we were aliens, we were part of some intergalactic council like Greenpeace,
Oh
all of
my
us
God.
as far as her followers, and that we would all come together to help her with her mission. And one of her little mind games was convincing us all that our higher selves were aliens from different planetary systems.
Okay,
And
so that is how she says she's from another planet. She's not physically speaking, but she's speaking about her higher self, whatever that may be.
yes, her higher self is some sort of energy fork, comes from a different planet and is projected into a human form, sort of like a holograph. And that's why she's been designed the way she's been designed. And everybody else is the same. Not everybody is the same. She's special, but as far as like the people that she has in her close inner circle, she convinces them that they are some sort of an alien in their higher self. And she even convinced myself that I was abducted by aliens, by gray aliens and
In this
reptilians.
life?
Yes,
Really?
really. She convinced us. It was sort of like an attempt to implant these memories during a particularly nasty evening with her. And in this process, she convinced me that her boyfriend at the time, who was a friend of mine beforehand, before I had moved down there, we'd gotten to know each other and become pretty good friends. And she didn't really like that. She kind of saw it as a potential problem. And so she kind of put a stop to it and tried to pit us against each other. And one night she tried to convince me that I'd been abducted by gray and reptilian aliens, that I had had mind control monitoring devices placed in my brain that could never be removed, otherwise I would die, that I had been raped, that my genetic material had been stolen, and that the person responsible for me being abducted was Fallon, her ex-boyfriend, because his higher self was a reptilian alien, and he had ordered my abductions.
Wow.
So that's the kind of crazy...
It sounds like a B-type science fiction movie.
Yes, and these stories that she spins they had a lot of twists and turns like sci-fi novels, and L. Ron Hubbard really comes to mind. It really does. Scientology really reads in a lot of her material, and I think Scientology's actually kind of got its fingers in a lot of outlets in the New Age arena as it is.
Okay.
And she's just really playing into that. And yeah, somebody like her who speaks fast, she's very convincing, she doesn't really hesitate. And you're in a setting after you've just done a long bout of shadow work, and you're kind of mentally, emotionally drained. You've been up for hours, and you're just wanting to go to bed. And then she whips some stories like this out on you, and you're kind of in shock. You walk away from that not knowing what's true, what's not true. It was a very odd, surreal experience being part of that group, where you kind of, when you're around a crazy person, it's amazing how surreal things can get and how people can devolve. You really can devolve into this sort of delusional type belief system.
Well, people, when they group together like that, and when they basically close themselves off from everything outside their own circle, and then they also usually start to develop this inner circle lingo. You know, they have like a way of phrasing things and using words, and so it becomes like this sort of safe nest, this sort of family type nest.
You become unmoored from reality together.
Totally, yeah.
And you're like in this make believe land.
Yes, this romanticized, spiritual utopia or something, but only for a little bit, because usually they end up being miserable.
Yes.
Because I remember even, like all of Byron Katie's staff, they are terrified of her. They are terrified, and they will stab anybody in the back to save their own asses.
Yeah, I experienced that as well, and it's very much group dynamic around somebody like that, a leader like that. That's how it works. It's just like this triangulation where people are pitted against each other, and it's all kind of it's a very toxic environment.
Yeah, because basically they all share this one loyalty towards this one person, and everyone and everything else is secondary, whether it's their relationship,
Precisely.
whether it's their children, it doesn't matter. Everything comes second, because she's always number one. I mean, I lived this for 12 years, Katie came first. I was working 18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week.
Exactly.
And because that was the big cause, that was the greater cause, and I was so fortunate that I was chosen to, assist in that, because that's how it felt.
Wow. Yes, you're speaking my language.
Well, the interesting.
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I want to try and describe what it was like for me, because of course Byron Katie was living in America and I was in Holland, and I was doing all this stuff here for setting up Europe. And I remember when Byron Katie and I agreed upon the fact that I was going to work for her, and she was going to pay me a salary. And then at the end she said, and I expect 100% from you. And I took that literally. So ever since that, I worked day and night. I would often get up at 4 a.m. to start, because every day there were like hundreds of emails that needed to be replied. So I would start on the emails and then just work through my day. And it always felt as if she was looking over my shoulder the entire time, because I believed that she knew everything. So I always felt that
Yeah.
she was watching every single. So I was terrified to make a mistake. I was
Yeah. Oh.
terrified to make a mistake.
And I think I just wasn't as good at, I just wasn't as dedicated because like you said, the no's kept growing. When I first started out, I was willing to do that. I was volunteering. I was willing to email all these people and do all of this work to try to get her in these places because I really believed that she was helping. And then I noticed as time went on and they were asking me to do things that I just completely lost my motivation to do it, and I just
Yeah.
couldn't. Like I physically couldn't do what I was doing before because I just lost the faith in
Yeah.
what she was doing. And that happened to me fairly fast, thankfully, but I can so relate to what you're saying because at the very beginning that was exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
And then it just after a certain point of being there and being so disillusioned, it just ended for me. And I think that she tried for a time to kind of turn that around, but it just never
Yeah,
it never panned out.
I was wondering about that. So what was it like living there, still living with her, but you were already losing faith? What was the relationship like then? Because she must have noticed that.
Oh, she did. Yes, it was very. It was tenuous. We had sort of a. I tiptoed around her. I really did. It was more like
Walking
I
on
thought
eggshells.
very much walking on eggshells, and I really thought that in my mind I was helping her. So because in my mind I knew she was deranged and mentally ill, but I felt like the satanic ritual abuse at that time was real. I actually did believe her stories at the very beginning until I started to see through the blatant inconsistencies in the story.
Yeah.
So at that time, I was still like, oh gosh, she needs help. She's just this poor girl.
Yeah.
She kept trying to say she was helping me. And I was always very resistant. She was always saying I needed her help and that she could see all these things that were wrong with me, and just kept trying to convince me that she was but this work would always come back to her. And whenever we would have, she would always have me do like a Byron Katie the work on her and the Judge Your Neighbor sheets, and it was always
Or
about her
she would
issue.
have you do the work on her.
Yes, and vice versa. She would
So
do it on
so
me.
you would write, I don't like teal because and stuff like that.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So she would have us do this thing, and then it would always kind of flip around to where it was me and then it was her. But I
It's
always
never
felt
her.
like I was doing it for her benefit. Like it was somehow helping her, because in my mind this was just. I mean, I even said that. I said I never really feel better when we do these. I don't exactly know why we're doing it. But for her, she seemed to be getting something out of it. So I really tried in that respect, and she knew that, and she fed on that. She knew that I was thinking that I was helping her, and that's exactly what she does. She plays this wounded bird, and
Yeah.
she convinces people that she's going to help them, and then when they get close to her, it's all about helping her.
Yeah.
So that was the situation. It was like you we it's like she fed on the fact that I was trying to help.
Well, that's something I always was thinking about, is that when you're in that position and you have all this attention and all this love and all this energy directed at you, especially when it's with a live audience, it must be such an addiction, because you must become so addicted to that, because when you're in that center of all that attention and love and energy and everybody looking up to you and you're on the stage and you're it, I mean, you really start to believe it. That's where you get your energy from. So how can you do without that?
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly what's going on, but it's so, to me, I mean, it's just so empty, because when you know that you're not the things that people are projecting on you, and you
Yeah.
know that this isn't true, and deep down you really feel like you're just you're just one step away from the whole thing crumbling down. I mean, that's just a lot of stress and pressure and anxiety that I could never live live under that. So to me, it's like, yes, I suppose you could get addicted to something like that. It's hard to identify with because knowing that you're not really that deep down, and just knowing that all
Yeah.
you are is projected ideals, and that it's just a house of cards waiting to come crashing down. I mean, that to me is just so empty. So I
But
feel for
that
her.
may go for anyone who is in that kind of a footlight, actually,
Yeah,
not just for Teal Swan, but for a
exactly.
whole lot of people. No, I
Anyone
mean,
who will ever.
look at movie stars and look at
Yep.
rock stars. It's the same
Just a
deal.
step away from insignificance. And to me, if you're building your entire identity on that, I mean, how sad for you just to be so empty if that goes
Yeah.
away.
Well, it is. It is. I think it is one of the biggest guru traps. Besides money and sex, that's the other one.
Yeah, it's the adoration and the
Yeah.
sense of worth that you get from
Yeah.
other people. But can you see how they're just so disempowered themselves when that's the case? They're giving their
Well,
entire sense of worth over to other people and what other people are thinking of them. It's just like it's stepping out of themselves. It's just crazy to me.
and they're having their ego stroked constantly,
Uh-huh. And
probably
becoming
thinking that they don't have an ego.
hmm
And then when it
hmm
feels so good, how can it possibly be wrong? No,
hedonism.
that's why it's a trap.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's one of my big issues with her is that she teaches that your purpose of your life is to be happy and to feel good. Who told you that that's the case? I mean, to me, that's
Is that
nothing
what she
new.
says?
Yes, that's not even a new
Oh,
concept. I
that
mean,
is
that's the
so
concept of
interesting.
hedonism. Hedonism has been around forever. And I think to me that's the big issue that I have with her is that the idea that the purpose of your life is to find your joy and feel good. I just don't know that that's the case, and I think that's being fed to us by some sort of an agenda. It seems, and it
By
and it
many of them, yeah.
yeah, and it feels like that's kind of the problem. The reason why we're in the predicament we're in is we've got all these
Yeah.
people chasing their joy to the expense of all else, and I don't really see where that's heading in a positive direction, societally speaking. And the other thing is like the narcissism is being kind of exalted. She's really appealing to a crowd that really is very egocentric a lot of times, and this idea of seeking money and fame and having that have some sort of that meaning that you've reached some sort of spiritual attainment is kind of
Yes, yes,
it's very disturbing to me that that's the direction that
yeah,
these people are leading us. A
yeah,
very superficial, shallow movement.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing. It's like, what we also talked about in the beginning, and it's something I'm still working on, is what is it in me that made me do that made me give myself over to someone else so completely, to an authority, to place a human being as an authority above me.
Right. It's a
And
gift.
there are so many people doing that, but why?
Well, I think that gift is in asking that question because not enough people are doing it. And to me, that's what this whole experience really was. It was the gift that allowed me to start asking that question. And I just started observing and realizing that we are conditioned from the time we're born. We
Oh,
do it in
that's true.
we do it in family systems. Then
Yeah.
we're put into the school systems where we are not taught to think critically. We are
No.
taught to learn, but we're not taught to think, and we're not taught to challenge authority. We're taught to look outside of ourselves for answers
We're
in
taught to obey,
yes,
and
textbook.
we're taught to being good, because when we're good, we're being graded.
When we're
And
following the
and
rules.
yeah, when we're following the rules, we're being graded. I mean, and we have a system 1 to 10. So if you're good, you get a 10, and you have the letters. You get like an A plus. And I think that is very true. That is deep down inside all of us. We're all looking for that approval, that authority to tell us, yes, you're good. You did it right.
Well, we're all looking for somebody to tell us what to do, what to focus on, what to think, because that's all we've ever known. And the patterns have all been laid out ahead of us. You go to school, you do well. I mean, you follow the rules. You learn this textbook, you learn that in school, and you don't actually ever really make your own
No,
way.
no,
You're
we
always
don't.
looking
No,
to somebody else. You're looking to a teacher. You're looking to an authority. You're looking to your boss at work. You're looking to a politician. We are
exactly.
never looking to our
No.
own actually see what it is that's going on. And I think
What we
that's part
want,
of the
yeah.
design. That's the design, is to keep us distracted and to keep us kind of just looking outside of ourselves, so that we're being herded around. And that's my belief, is we're being herded because we allow ourselves to be herded. And
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that we're born that way, but it's definitely a design.
I don't think we were born that way. I mean, someone described it as, we're being handed lists. It's like when we're very young, our list is, you need to finish what's on your plate, you need to become potty trained, and you need to go to sleep on time. And then when you grow up a little bit, your list changes, because then all of a sudden you have to say thank you and please, and you have to be nice to people, and you have to share your toys, and you have to clean your room, right? And then when you grow up, you go to school, then the list is different again, because then you have to be able to maintain yourself in that, with your peers, which is hard enough for most of them. And then you have to get good grades, and you have to listen to your teachers, and then all of a sudden, you end up married, and all of a sudden the list is, you have to know how to be a good lover, and how to be a provider, how to be a mother, how to. And then you go into the spiritual field, and you're handed the same list.
So, I just find it fascinating that we are actually just following these lists that have been laid out for us for centuries.
Yes.
And if you really look back at history, have we really changed much?
No.
And we keep doing the same things over
Over
and
and
over
over again.
historically.
Yes.
And nobody
First
really
it was the church and the priests,
questioning.
and now it's the politicians and the doctors, and the spiritual teachers. Yeah.
The gift is in the questioning. If we start to do that and start to recognize that maybe that's the purpose, maybe the purpose is to actually observe and understand our surroundings so that we can make some changes, because otherwise we're just following what's been done before, whether it's the guru, or if it's the priest, or if it's the teachers at the school, or your family. It's just the same patterns and same history repeating itself. So I mean, to me personally, that's what was the bigger question, the bigger eye-opening for me, was to start questioning this and observing this and kind of looking at it from Teal is a microcosm of a bigger problem, in my opinion. It's definitely a very widespread issue of handing your minds over to an authority, and I think that was the gift from the whole experience with her.
Yeah. And I could say the same for myself, only mine took a bit longer than yours, that's all.
And I think that's huge, that at least we have this to start questioning and moving forward.
To start critically question for yourself, because we're not taught that. And I think one of the reasons why people don't is because of fear. Because they are afraid of what they'll lose. Because I mean, my biggest fear when I was working with Bar and Katie, was that I might lose her.
Exactly.
And that I might lose my special position and my friendship, and I might lose her love. So therefore, I could never make a mistake. I had to be perfect.
I mean, think about our family systems. It's the same thing. Love and acceptance is the glue that's holding the systems in place, because people are so afraid to step outside of these boxes. They do what they're supposed to do because they don't want to lose love. They don't want to lose acceptance. And so we just continue on and doing the same things that we've done before, and we fall into the next trap, or the next guru, or the next authority figure that we're handing our mind over to. Or
So let's go back to when she basically said it would be better if you killed yourself because you were not committed to life, and you needed to find out that while driving your car. So what happened after that? You packed your bags, and then did you actually leave, or what happened?
No, that's where my biggest that was the biggest turning point for me, is watching how I went back into that situation, because of the manipulation side of things. There was the group pressure and the Fallon calling and telling me that, oh, she didn't mean, she just was so upset, she was worried about you, are you okay? And then I had the others in the group saying, don't go, we really want you to stay, we think you can work this out. And so I ended up going back over to her house, which is, I'm ashamed and embarrassed, but at the same point, I've kind of come to terms with that, and I'm more to a place of understanding as to why I did it, and kind of really looked into the mechanisms and the nuts and bolts of why I went back into that situation. And so I was there for another month or so after that. But it
So,
didn't. I mean, I still something switched in me. I never
yeah, I was just
trusted.
going to ask, had anything changed between your relationship and her?
I never trusted her. Obviously, I mean, I don't. Didn't. I always kept. At that point, you can't trust somebody and take what they say as gospel when that's the case. You've
Yeah.
lost a major foundational um, trust factor when somebody does something like that. So that definitely changed. The,
So,
the, the, the dynamic switched more to a place of pity for me than a place of adoration and admiration.
but nevertheless, the outcome was the same because you were still there doing her chores for her.
Correct.
Isn't that interesting?
hmm It took me some time to actually extract completely, but it was an unwinding. It started an unwinding from
So,
that.
so when did you actually leave, and was there some event attached to that, or how did that happen?
I actually left when, yes, there was an event attached to that. I went to the New York workshop, and I was already kind of on the fence. We had the last Shadow House episode. I'd pretty much said I was done. I wasn't going to do anymore, participate anymore, and been over at the apartment with the other people, but I wasn't really on good terms with Teal at that point.
Okay.
But I had a plane ticket bought. I had arrangements to be at this New York workshop with some people that I had previously been to workshops with, and so I went for the whole sense of community and the friendships that I'd had at that point. So
Mm-hmm.
I went to this workshop, and during the course of that, there was some interactions with Teal and the group, which was fine. But then there was some people that were coming up to me after seeing the Shadow House, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? What's going on?" And then just kind of really pointing out that this was sort of an emotional abuse that was happening. And one woman actually approached me, and she said she was actually with a man there who was very into Teal, and she wasn't, and
Mm-hmm.
they were having marital problems as it was, and I know that they actually did end up getting a divorce after that, but the problems were probably there before Teal, but she didn't help. And the woman sat me down and she said, I watched those Shadow House episodes, and it really seems very cult-like. And watching what happened to you, if that was my daughter, I would probably ask that she come home.
Yeah.
And she said some very poignant things to me, and she explained her situation with her husband. And I just said, you know what, you're right. You're not the first person that's told me this, and this is very, very much something for me to consider. And so that was there. And finally, there was another woman that showed up that I did not speak to, but she
Mm-hmm.
spoke to another girl in our group. And this
Mm-hmm.
woman was going around, apparently she was a shaman of some kind, and she was going around telling people that this is not right. There are too many newly awakening people and all this stuff, saying that
How
Teal was
brave.
yes, saying that Teal was an Illuminati figurehead is what she was
Oh,
basically
what was it? Say, come again? What did you?
an Illuminati
Yeah.
figurehead is what she was calling Teal, which I didn't really believe at that point, but I was kind of it planted a seed, and she gave this other girl some pretty convincing arguments that Teal was not here helping people, but actually misleading people,
Hmm.
and was part of a different agenda. So for me, it was kind of like playing into the whole conspiracy theory David Icke thing. So I definitely left there with
Ah.
with some seeds planted in my mind, like, oh my gosh, what if she is? I mean, look at all
Yeah.
this stuff she's done, Cameron. She's not actually helping you. So if she's not
I'm
here
not
doing
really sure that I know what an Illuminati figurehead would mean. I mean, I understand the term Illuminati, but what is an Illuminati figurehead? Like she was working for them, or how was that meant?
well, I don't know enough about it to explain it. And I mean, it's a conspiracy theorist idea. But if you want me to break it down briefly, it's
Yeah.
basically that there's an agenda by the 1% of the world's money holders
Yeah,
to
yeah. The
control the rest of the
yes.
world, and kind of herd us all towards a one world religion, a one world government, and a one
New
world
New
currency.
World Order. Yeah,
A
yeah.
new world order, yes. And so they have these figureheads in place that are kind of herding
Okay,
people
now I get you. Okay, so
toward that
she is a
end.
figurehead. Yes.
She would be
Okay.
person that's groomed to kind of move people towards a one world religion sort of thing. So
And do you believe that?
at this point,
Yeah.
I believe that there is some sort of a agenda as far as the 1% goes. I don't believe that she is necessarily closely tied or knows about that, but I think she's not aware that she's working for that agenda. Yes, I don't believe
Okay.
that she's personally been given knowledge about it, but I think
Okay.
that she is on. She's not aware that she's actually promoting those ideas that have been put out there by them.
Yeah, she might not even object to that term or that title because it would make her all the more special.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's so. I mean, I'm not going to give her any more power than that because it's really not about her being some all-powerful being. It's about
No,
people
she's not. No.
giving their power away. And I think
That's
that that
it.
Illuminati thing
That's
just
it.
really kind of enforces that she is some sort of a powerful being when she's not, because she has no power if she has no followers. And it's really the followers taking their own power, and we don't have to worry about Illuminati. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm at with the Illuminati thing. I don't
Yeah.
really necessarily at that point. That's where I was, but
Uh,
obviously I've changed as far as I'm not concerned with the fear and the paranoia that goes along with that.
Yeah, no. Me neither. I just wanted to get the term explained a little bit.
Yeah.
Also thinking of the listeners. So then, okay, so then this shaman lady had sort of planted that seed, and then you finally left. So how did you tell her you were leaving, or did you break up with her? How did that go?
I got
Your final leaving.
Well, that's where I got back to the apartment and I shared with the others what had gone on there, and then they went back to Teal and spoke to her. And then in the meantime, I'd left to go to my brother's wedding, and I said, I don't know. This is what happened when I was in New York. I'm not sure exactly what to make of it, but I need to go home and clear my head a little bit. So
Uh-huh.
that was the first time I'd been home. And then when I was home, my parents were really starting to talk to me about this, and my mom had actually said, "Please do me a favor. Will you please look up cults on the internet?" Because at that point,
Oh,
I knew nothing about cults, and
really?
so right, I what I had known was like Jim Jones and I
Yeah.
thought they were a bunch and Charles Manson. I thought
Like
they were
Manson, yeah.
a bunch of Kool-Aid drinking loonies, and I thought, boy, you're too sane, you're too independent, you're not in a
Yeah.
cult, come
No.
on.
Yeah.
So my mom had me look them up, and I just was shocked when I read about what cult leaders are, because Teal fit that description
Yeah.
to a T. And
Yeah.
I was just seeing how this group pressure and all this dynamics was really at play, and I made up my mind that at that point when I got back I was going to be moving. So I did tell another girl there that that was my plan, and then they had talked to Teal. And when I got back from my brother's wedding to the apartment to kind of arrange to move, she had all of them confront me, kind of group style, and try to convince me that I was crazy.
Was she there too?
No, she was manipulating them. So I got back. They all ran over to her house. She pretty much told them what to do, and then they came back over in the middle of the night after I'd been up all night traveling, and while I was sleep deprived, they tried to confront me and kind of tried to break me down and try to convince me that I was crazy.
How did they try to convince you that you was crazy?
That I had said all of that they had spoken to Teal, and that Teal had said told them that I had said all of these things about them individually, and just pitting them against me, basically trying. And then she told them that I had dissociative identity disorder, and that I didn't believe that I didn't remember the things that I'd said, and that I had borderline personality disorder. And they all were talking to me about this, trying to say that, look, she said you said all of these things, and just trying to totally convince me that I was nuts. And I knew what she was doing because I had kind of seen what happens in a cult purge like that. They really try to break the follower down, and they have to convince that the other members that that person is crazy and that person is the problem. And it's just a classic cult purge is what happened.
So you were having kidney problems, you were borderline, you were passively suicidal, and you were, oh my God, and you were also being abducted by the Greys. That's amazing to say that to someone, isn't it?
Right. Right. Kidney, you mean blood sugar, pancreas problems? Yes.
Did you ever go to a doctor and have it checked out?
Actually, when I left Utah, I was actually it was just such an emotionally draining experience. And I had been in fight or flight for so long with these
Oh
people that
wow.
I ended up actually having adrenal fatigue. And I did have to go through some leveling out and getting back to good. I'm finally
Hmm.
I'm happy to say I'm good now. It wasn't like permanent damage, but I did have adrenal fatigue when I left Utah.
Yeah. So when you left, was that the end of it, or
As far
as the teal community goes, or did they?
oh yeah,
Okay, it was
yeah,
over and it was done with.
I cut all contact. I blocked them on Facebook. I blocked just about everybody I knew through them, and I just did a lot of internal work. Got my life back together. Got my own basically deprogramming out of the way, because I really had to sort
But
through
you
all
did
of the
it
damaging
yourself
beliefs
on
that I
your
had adopted.
own? Did you do all your deprogramming on your own?
I had a very good friend who helped me initially, who was also involved in the teal camp, and I had him as a major support, thank goodness. And we spent some time going through everything and really comparing and our experiences and talking it through and recognizing together all this damaging stuff that we had adopted.
Yeah.
So that was the first step, and then it was a continuous process. It took a while. It took probably a year and a half, and I had other help as well. I obviously spoke.
That's fast. I think I took longer than that. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
yeah,
took longer
you
than
had
that.
a lot of time to take on all of that, and I mean, I just was fortunate to have meet some very good people at the right times, and that were very supportive, very thankful to have them and work through it with them, because they were willing to. And I don't know what I would have done if I was just by myself, because it would have been very difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's a big emotional turmoil that you go through when you've given yourself away completely, and then when you break it off. That's never to be taken lightly, I think, ever.
No, it is quite the experience. Right
And
now, I can look at it in hindsight and be like, wow, that was great. I'm so thankful that I was able to get in and get out when I did, and open my eyes to so many things. So from now, I'm grateful to be at that point. But when you're in it, it's very very
yes,
difficult.
yes, I know what you're talking about. So then you also said that you almost got into something else right away.
Yeah,
Would
I
you
mean,
like to tell me about that?
it's a typical thing when I was with my first the first person that I was talking to about this and had told the whole situation to. We ended up falling into sort of another similar type of teachers group, and similar but not. I mean, he's not dangerous by any means, but it's a very similar type of belief system with the law of attraction and some sort of the galactic connections and whatnot. So there was that I fell into briefly, and then thanks, it was helpful at the time. And I think the thing with most of these groups is there is some value that you can get within these, but the key is take that value and get out. And I think that's what happened for me in that group. And thankfully I did, was only there briefly. It was enough to kind of move to recognize that this is a pattern that I don't want to continue. And then I ended up actually speaking with another person, which I think you and I both know.
Yeah, you can say names. That's okay.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was Jess and Diego with
Yeah.
the EOF project, and
Yeah.
so made some more great connections as far as understanding goes there, and I'm very thankful for that as well. So it's just been it's been a process, but not falling into any of the traps has been key. And I think that when you go from, the key is recognizing that we're handing ourselves over to things, whether like you said, it's one guru to the next. That's a classic pattern, or you can stop and recognize
Well,
what's going on.
it is like, like there's some people who are sort of typical guru groupies because they'll go anywhere. Like you go to any satsang and you see those, those same faces. And then there's some people like me and like you who are just too loyal for that and who stick to one person.
Yeah, exactly.
Until it's all used up.
Exactly. And it was definitely that case. I am sort of a loyalist in a lot of respects, but I'm I'm now to the point where when you're burned like that, it's a good lesson, and I'm taking that with me, and it's not going to happen again. And for that, I'm very grateful.
Well, darling, it happened to me 3 times. I started out when I was 14, and
I was so young, though.
yeah,
And your family probably was part of that as well.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough when your family is involved in
Well,
belief.
not so much the first one was the Indian guru that I spent
Ah,
5 years with my mom, and yeah, the one thing that my mother never did was protect me.
right. And
Basically,
that's
she
what I
was
got.
envious of my position, and she wanted the same. And
Hmm.
I was angry with her for a long time. But then later on, I started to realize is see, when you're children, you think grown-ups know it all and that they're supposed to be grown-ups, but they're only children in grown-up bodies. That's all. There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. I still see that the same way.
I know. Isn't that a crazy realization? I
Yeah.
mean, I want to hear more of your story. I'm very interested in that. But I definitely identify with you. As I love my mother to death. I've just grown up with knowing that my mother and I were so close in age that we were both children. We were both
Yeah.
children growing up together, and
Yeah.
it's a major realization when you're first finding that out as a child.
Yeah. That your parents are actually normal people.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
fortunate to find that out fairly early as well because
But do you see the similarity with the whole guru story? We do the same thing. We basically project onto that spiritual teacher what we projected onto our parents as these infallible, perfect. Your dad was Superman and your mom was Superwoman, until you realize that they had their own flaws and that they were actually. And then some people go against them and have to break up with them. But then with these spiritual teachers, it's the same. We project this image of they are perfection. They are love in a physical form. They are one with the universe, and they know everything until we start to see their flaws. Because ultimately, I think every human being is totally equal to every other human being.
and I think that's the huge lesson in all of it. So I totally agree with you. 100%.
But because I think you can only start to think for yourself when you see that. Because as long as you think that there are people, of course, there are always people who know. I mean, obviously, someone who is an astronaut knows more about stuff than I do because I'm not, or who's a doctor knows more anatomy or, medical science than I do because I'm not. But we're talking about this whole spiritual market where human beings deliberately place an authority above them and then start to worship that.
Exactly.
And it's
This
and it's almost with this whole new age thing happening. I don't even know what that means, but it has become explosive within the Western world because before India came close to us, it was the priests and it was the church and that's it. But then all of a sudden, all these enlightened beings started to flood our continents and give satsangs. And first, I remember when we started off with Bar and Katie, there were several others. There were a lot of people traveling through Europe who came from Punjaji, Papaji. Do you know who that was? Okay, he was this Indian guru in Lucknow, and his first Western disciple that he declared enlightened is called Andrew Cohen.
Oh,
And then you have Gangaji, and then you have Isaac Shapiro, and there were a whole bunch of people, and they were going all over. We met them in Germany and in the Netherlands and in Portugal, everywhere we went, and they were just happily giving stuff because that was before the internet days, so it was on a different scale. They were doing their satsangs, and everybody was going there, and then of course, then with the internet, it exploded even more because everyone can start a website and do some online workshops and write some stuff down and sell it, and Bob's your uncle, right?
right. And isn't that interesting, though, that you're looking at the history of religions, and it was Catholicism and Christianity, and like you're saying, the Hinduism and all the rest of these religions that have been around for thousands of years, and we're still moving into that same trap with the New Age. So
Yeah.
that's why a lot of people would think that this New Age spirituality movement is kind of just an attempt to move us all towards some sort of a one world religion as well. And I think that that's kind of an interesting take on it when you're looking at, well, it's the same pattern. We're just calling it a new name, packaging it up,
Yes.
but
But
it's
we're
the same
doing the
thing.
same thing. We are giving
Yeah.
away our money, our time, our energy, our devotion, our admiration,
And
and
essentially, our
our
lives,
self-worth.
yeah, our lives are getting eaten up.
Yeah.
And I really like this quote by Socrates: "An unexamined life is not worth living." That to me is so key.
I think Byron Katie uses that quote too from
Oh, well, it's
Socrates.
Socrates. I'm not going to give it to Byron Katie. Sorry, Katie. But I think that basically that's just it's very key, because I look around at so many people in my own life, like just my family members even, and it's just, you just go ahead on autopilot. You don't really look, you don't really stop, you don't really think. You're just doing what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not just that. Yeah, okay, yeah, but also with those people, what you said, you know, when you first started to get into Teal, you actually started to feel better, because with a lot of these groups, and I know that this happens with the work of Byron Katie a lot. People get this, you know, one of the first times they do it, they get this major aha experience, which I had too, because in all honesty, what I must say, what I took away from there, what I really learned is to reflect, because that had never occurred to me in any way. I had never encountered that.
Yeah.
So in that sense, in the beginning, the turnaround was good for me, because I learned to actually critically look at myself instead of always pointing the blaming finger towards an outside source.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that
you
is,
know, when you talk about taking responsibility, that is what I learned. But from there on, it became this completely over protocol system that became so rigid that keeps you locked in the
trapped.
loop. In the
Yep,
loop
keeps you
where you
trapped.
keep doing it over and over again.
And that's exactly what I ran into with the law of attraction. And like that started to make me feel better.
Yeah.
It started to make me feel better, but only to a certain point, because then guess what? Then you're only, you can think positive, 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 but it's only because you're afraid to think negative, and you're just caught up in
Yes.
this trap that you can never get out of. So yes, it goes
Exactly.
so far, but it can only be like a drug, because
And
it's not really getting to the
even
root of the problem.
yeah, and even worse, um, when you realize that it's no longer working, it's because you're not doing it right. Right?
I never felt that. No,
No. What you're not hearing what I'm saying. When
oh,
you, it's like when people, you know, when they started to notice that the work didn't work, and they would complain about it to Katie and say, "Well, it doesn't
oh,
work," and then she would say, "Yeah, but are you really doing the work?"
right. Okay. Yep.
Implying that if it doesn't work, it's because you're not doing it right,
Right. And
not
that's
because the
exactly like
system doesn't
Teal.
work, because the system is perfect.
That's like Teal saying, though, that,
Yeah.
oh, the law of attraction isn't working because you haven't done your shadows. So it's just
Yes.
no difference. And that now you got to do your
Yes.
shadow work first, and then it'll work more.
Yeah.
It's the same type of thing where you're just being told that, oh, it's your fault if it doesn't work. It's because you're not doing it right. I absolutely get what you're saying with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically the system can never be criticized, because I remember Byron Katie would allow people to do the work on anything but the work itself. The moment people would go there, she would immediately steer them away. You were not to touch it.
Hmm. Interesting, isn't it?
It's very interesting. That's saying something.
Hmm.
So do you think like Teal, like, would she be suffering from a mental disorder? Could that be it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's essentially what I think a lot of, it's a prerequisite for most of these charismatic figureheads and leaders to do. I mean, most of them have sociopathic, delusional qualities to begin with, in order for
Well,
them to want to take on
yeah.
this position of having the answers and thinking that they know what's best. So, do I think that she had pre-existing or current? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about it. She sent me personal, private emails
Mm-hmm.
saying that she's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which
Mm-hmm.
is a very incurable, and
Very incurable, yeah.
it's also one of the worst to treat and from psychological standpoint. And
And it
she's
always
also
comes with an addiction.
and cutting or drugs or sex or whatever.
Or needing to be the center of attention. That's an addiction too.
It is, and narcissistic personality disorder is also another very obvious to me disorder that she suffers from, as far as her grandiose ideas about world change and needing everybody to buy into her vision, and that's a major part of it. And I mean, schizoaffective really comes to mind, and she's even admitted to being diagnosed with that as a child because they couldn't explain why she was, seeing things, hallucinating, claiming to see ghosts and thought forms and see things that aren't there. And
Yeah.
I mean, these are all disorders that people
That can be traced back to something, to a diagnosis or something.
and it's not necessary to have trauma. I mean, she could have had genetic factors as a child, and then they never had an explanation for it until she got older and saw some sort of a therapist, and then all of a sudden, it all makes sense now. That's why I'm the way I am. And it's just a matter of realizing that these people are mentally ill. I mean, it's just, this is what it is. We have diagnosis for this. This is what we would call mentally ill in the spiritual community, but the spiritual community likes to call it messiahs or or
and
they're
and
going
and
through a
the
shaman.
and how the brain works, it is a mystery even to scientists.
True. Even psychology is fairly new, so
Yeah.
it doesn't really have all of the answers. So if you wanted to say that is she mentally ill by our Western medical psychiatric rubric, absolutely, I would say so.
Yeah, there's this woman, God, I can't remember her name now. She wrote a book, and she supposedly had something similar to the experience that Byron Katie describes, like from one day to the next, she basically hung outside of her body, and then she went through a whole process, and it evolved, and she thought she was fully enlightened, and then, as it turns out, because she died soon after that, she had a brain tumor. I mean, when you have when something in your brain presses on the wrong places, you can start to see stuff. You really can. I'm not implying here that Teal has a brain tumor. I wouldn't want anyone to hear that in my words, because I don't think that. But I'm just saying it as an example of, just because people have these experiences or phenomena happen or abilities that they describe, it doesn't mean anything.
Right. It's the meaning we attach to it.
It doesn't.
I definitely wish that she would have had some sort of a brain scan done. She claimed to have all the DMT removed in her brain or released in her brain, excuse me, and all of these interesting abilities that are far beyond the norm. It'd be interesting to see, a brain scan done, just to see if there's any sort of abnormalities or special quality to it.
I'm sure she's not going to volunteer anytime soon for that, and then make it public.
Who knows? It might help her credibility if she would. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's amazing that we attach such meaning to things like that when it could have just been, a brain abnormality.
Yeah, and also the interesting thing is, all these claims, they cannot be verified.
Precisely.
And especially, like you said, when we started, that she never ever said anything that would prove that she is really a psychic that can see stuff. Then that makes it all the more questionable, actually, I would say.
Very much so. I don't think I've ever seen an accurate prediction come out of her mouth yet. So I've said this before, better predictions than fortune cookies I've gotten.
Yeah.
I just don't see any kind of psychic ability. And then when she should be able to use her psychic abilities for simple things, she can't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
She couldn't tell that there's no such thing as a mini pig before she bought one as a pet.
Oh.
That's not very psychic, I wouldn't think.
It is like those gypsy ladies with the crystal ball. People would always go there because people get fascinated when someone predicts their future. because they
But we
really
want
want to
answers.
believe it. Yeah, we want to believe it. We want to believe it, you know? And so, yeah.
We want
Just,
answers, we want certainty, but there's really no certainty.
no, there isn't. No, there isn't. Well, Cameron, you did it. You've been talking with me for 2 hours. Do you realize that?
Oh my goodness. Yay. That was fun.
Did you have a notion that, oh my God, I'm doing radio?
I did not.
No,
I
that's what I said to you. You know, after 2 minutes, you'll forget the whole thing. It'll just be you and me talking.
it was a blast. I love speaking to you. It was my pleasure.
So, darling, thank you so much for your openness, for your courage. Of course, there's this magazine coming out called The Ethics of the Modern Guru that will have something on Teal Swan.
Yes, I'm excited for that to come
And
out.
some more stuff. Well, you know, I love to hear these stories and to share them, you know, through this radio program and also through my website. I'm not into slandering or smearing people. I mean everyone, you know, should absolutely do whatever they want, but people need to be informed.
Right.
People need to have the information to see different sides of the coin and not just one.
And I'm so on board with that. I mean, that's my goal with even speaking
Yeah.
about this. Is just people
Yeah.
to make an informed decision at the end of the day. That's all you can
Yes.
ask. You can't make people do anything, but if they want to take their minds back and they want to be informed, that's the best
Yeah.
you can hope
That's
for.
the best you can do. So on this note, thank you so much for your time.
Of course,
And
thank you for
again, for
having
your
me.
courage. Yes.
Thank you.
And until we meet again, thank you very much.
Thank you.